What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Super pumped about Monster Hunter Wilds coming out right around the corner. I just got done tuning into what's, I guess, the developer discussion, if you will, with the legendary Yu Tokita, and they went over some significant changes that are going to be occurring on release. And I want to go over those changes for you guys so you don't have to watch a whole entire hour and 23-minute video. One of the most important changes, we're getting right into it, is the build system is undergoing a significant change that I think is absolutely going to be for the better. In fact, I covered Wild Hearts before it fell off a cliff, and I feel like they may have taken some inspiration from Wild Hearts build system. But let's go ahead and get into it so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So essentially what they're doing here is they're enabling you to put inherent skills onto your weapon upgrades. And what this is going to allow you to do is to be a bit more meticulous in your build path, because now the weapons you're upgrading to are going to retain the previous weapon skill that was on the previous weapon that you had. I'll give you an example here. On this screen, what they're showing, this weapon called the Hope Blade 2, it has speed sharpening level 1 as an inherent skill. Now he's going to upgrade into Hope Blade 3, and it's going to retain the speed sharpening, which again, that was the inherent skill on the previous weapon. So now what they're enabling you to do is to be more meticulous with your build path going into that max rarity weapon. You're now going to be able to go and take a look at that little tree line and go, oh, that weapon there has attack 3. That weapon there has critical eye. That weapon there has quick sheath. Oh, and then I can actually build a path into securing all 3 of those perks. That way I can put them on my max rarity longsword or my max rarity charge blade, whatever the case may be. You're going to be able to make a build specifically for the weapon you're using as an in-game build. Not only are you going to be able to do that, but this frees up the jewels that you're going to be putting on your armor as well as your weapon, right? Your weapon's also going to have its jewels in addition to these equipment skills that are inherent. This is huge because you're going to be able to basically have a much more creative freedom and control over the build you're trying to cook up. And then once you have all those like perks that you choose from building out your build path, well, you'll just fill in the blanks with the remaining jewel slots on your armor, as well as whatever is attached to the armor that you have on. As you can see, this is a bit more expansive and again, more creative freedom over your build. This is absolutely a better system for Monster Hunter World, and it's genius. And like I said, I think they got it from Wild Hearts. If you don't know and you never played Wild Hearts, they had the same system, except it was actually a cap to how many inherent skills you can put onto a weapon. You would go to the final product and you would basically run into like too many skills on a weapon and you'd have to get rid of one of them. So you kind of plan it out ahead of time and you'd go, okay, these are the skills I'm trying to get from these particular weapons. The rest of them, I'm just going to throw that shit in the trash. And these are the final skills I'm going to have. Now, what's crazy is they didn't actually answer how this is actually going to play out, because here's the other thing. If this skill tree goes all the way up to like white rarity, which I feel like it's like 10 weapons at that point, you could very well have 10 equipment skills on your weapon before you even fill in your jeweled slots. And so my question is, are they going to actually allow you to have that many skills, or are they going to put a cap on it and say, once you reach like 5 or 6, gonna be the same concept as Wild Hearts, you're gonna have to like get rid of the inferior perks for the more significant perks? I don't know. They actually didn't answer that one, but they did say that previous skills don't expire. They're not gonna go anywhere. So take that as you will, and you know, take away from that what you will. But yeah, that's pretty much the most significant change. Now let's go over some of the other changes that are also pretty important. Okay, this is one that's pretty important to me. I'm a firm believer in one significant variable of enjoying Monster Hunter combat is the weightiness and the impact, as well as the SFX of the moves you're pulling off. And when I got into the beta, I personally felt that the moves felt inferior in that regard in Wilds than they did in World, particularly the longsword too. But what was cool is this was a dev's listened experience. Yu Tokita said that the adjustment of hit stop and sound effects, they heard that feedback and they've been working on them. So they've adjusted attacks to feel more weighty and impactful with the focus on big moves and finishers. This is incredible. And they also showed off demonstrations as well, which we'll tune into that in a bit. But this is incredible because, like I said, a big part of these games is they're slower and more like clunky by design, and that's because they want you to feel rewarded when you pull off the big moves and the finishers and some of the more challenging moves, right? The monster does a certain move, presents you with an opportunity to punish him. Now you want to feel that reward, you want to feel that satisfaction. And a big variable of feeling that dopamine is the connectivity of the move, the hitbox, and the feel of it. So let's take a look at what they did, because they used a good sword as a benchmark, and that is obviously the great sword with the true charge slash. Okay, here we go. Good sound, good sound. Yeah, that, like I said, so they use the greatsword as an example, but throughout the update, you'll be able to hear the other weapons. They also showed off Insect Glaive. We're going to go into that next. They showed off Switch Axe, and you're able to hear the sound of those moves too. And it sounds really good, a lot more crisp, a lot more polished. Like I said, move connectivity, very important in these kind of games. This next one's absolutely hilarious. They addressed friendly fire, which if you're not a Monster Hunter player, you're probably thinking like, wait, what do you mean friendly fire? Yeah, friendly fire is a thing in Monster Hunter. Now you don't take any damage, you actually lose damage. What happens is you get knocked into the air by some troll who's playing hammer. They have this move called an upswing where they can knock you literally into the air. You go flying. And they usually do it at pivotal moments of a fight where you're supposed to be doing damage. The monster's toppled over and you're trying to do your best abilities to get some good damage off. They sling you flying into the air, and now you missed out on your big damage window opportunity. Yeah, it's pretty fucking annoying when you get paired with randoms and they're trolling you like that. Well, they nerfed it for the better. Now the hammer mains, the trolls, they're not gonna like this, but now you just get knocked down and you get right back up, right? So they still can do a bit of trolling, but nowhere near as bad as getting fucking sent to the moon and back when they upswing you in the air. Now you just get knocked down. It's not so bad anymore. And obviously, again, they can still troll a bit, but it's more tame. Next change is going to be monsters changing areas. One thing that was really annoying for me during the closed beta was how rapid these monsters would change areas. And I mean like on the swivel. Well, turns out Tokita said that was a bug. It wasn't intended. And now when we play Monster Hunter on release, they'll be much more similar to Monster Hunter World's like schedule of changing areas, which was honestly pretty damn balanced. So you don't have to worry about monsters like just taking off for no reason at all. It's going to be balanced. All right, now this change here is going to be a massive W for the Insect Glaive mains that were casuals who just pretty much enjoyed flying around the air. I'll let the footage do the talking for me. And there you have it. Aerial Glaive is back. I was one of the people who was okay with Aerial Glaive being taken out of the game because it doesn't really take away from the DPS. The maximum DPS, the way of the Insect Glaive, the meta way, the nerdy way, is you're pretty much on ground majority of the time, right? I understand that logic perfectly well, but it's not about the meta way. What it's about is that playstyle enjoyable for the player that is playing with that class? And there were a lot of people who enjoyed Insect Glaive in the air, regardless of the DPS loss, regardless of all the nerdy shit. They liked playing the Insect Glaive in the air. And so why shouldn't that be an option for them? Because that's how they enjoy playing the game. Well, thankfully, the devs listened. The Aerial Glaive is back, and not only is it back, it's actually better because I took a look at the notes here. We'll come back to that ability there in a bit. Guess what? Aerial attack power increases by 2 levels each time you vault. So each time you vault, do your move, jump back up in the air, your attack power increases. You're actually getting a benefit from doing the Aerial Glaive playstyle now, which is, I think that's really cool. So that's back. Aerial Glaive is good. People can celebrate now and stop being mad about Aerial Glaive being taken out of the game. They put it back in the game just for y'all. Now, one other move I want to talk to you guys about is adding an offset effect at the beginning of the descending slash. Let's go back over here real quick and take a look at the descending slash. Okay, I just wanted to pause this real quick. The offset effect is essentially a counter or a parry, if you will. Now, they didn't show any HP bar here, so I don't know if you still lose like a smidge of HP or not, but essentially what this is it enables your charged ability on your Insect Glaive to counter if you time it correctly, the first move. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Oh, that thing's about to hit him. And as you can see, right when the training dummy is about to pop him, he releases his ability at the same time to jab it and triggers a counter. Let's watch that one more time. He's charging it up, and he's waiting for that thing to hit him. And listen to the SFX on it, man. They've been cooking with the hits, the weightiness, the impact. I love it. I'm so excited. But now the Insect Glaive essentially has a counter. Now, why is that important? That impact frame right there in particular, because that move is actually one of the strongest moves of the Insect Glaive. But if you pull it off and you do the exact same thing and you don't get the counter, well, you just wasted your move. You just got knocked on your ass. It's cool that they made it a skill, right? It's a timing issue, a knowledge issue. And if you pull it off correctly, not only are you going to counter them and knock them on their butt, but you're also going to do a bunch of damage in the process. Beautiful game design, massive W for Insect Glaive mains. The final thing I want to touch up on for the IG is that these guys pretty much added back in what was already existing in Monster Hunter World, and I think Rise as well. But basically, once you get all extracts, you're going to be able to mitigate wind pressure, tremors, and roars. This was something that already existed in the previous titles, and negating knockback while your weapon is drawn is a way to basically make the class a bit more comfortable as you're playing it. Now, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to full screen for this one. Unfortunately, they did not fix the aiming issue where you charge up your bug, shoot it at them, and then he goes through them and tries to collect as many extracts as possible. On the controller, it's only problematic. You pretty much are, your thumb is occupied charging up the freaking bug. It's really hard to explain this. It's kind of annoying. But essentially, you cannot look around when you're charging up that bug. You can only go left to right. You can strafe left to right and try to line up with the monster to make the extract connect. They did not change that. They didn't even mention it. They kind of just glossed over it. That was the only real problem with the Insect Glaive, in my personal opinion, that needed to kind of be more configured with the button inputs. But they didn't address that, unfortunately. But to be completely honest, there is another way to extract all three of the extracts. There's a super move that you do. When you do it, you actually consume all three extracts. But if you hit all of the wounded parts while doing this move, you can get them all back again. When the game launches, I'll explain that. I spent a good degree of time with Insect Glaive, and you'll understand that the other means of charging the Insect Glaive up with the terrible aiming on the controller is not the only means of gaining all the extracts. I know it's micromanaging hell, but there's ways to maneuver around that. But if you play on keyboard, it's not a problem. If you play on keyboard, you just ignore what I just said. It doesn't make a difference. There's one more thing that the dev brought up that I'm so glad he was insanely based about this. People were complaining about having to hold down circle with their thumb while pressing triangle, right? Guys, get it. Let me tell you something. I understand the freaking aiming around with the Insect Glaive. It sucks that they didn't remedy that. But complaining about holding down circle and pressing triangle, I mean, bro, did we not grow up playing fighting games, guys? Did we not grow up playing Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Virtua Fighter, like Tekken Tag, goddamn Soul Calibur? Bro, you've never held down circle while pressing triangle. It's not that big of a deal. And you know what was funny? I had this thought process before the dev addressed it, and even the dev pretty much said the same thing. He just said it much more respectfully than I do. Basically, he said, skill issue, get good. We're not changing that. That's literally, the dev did say that. He said, we took into consideration what you guys were saying about holding down circle and pressing triangle. And yeah, get good. We're not changing that. Insanely based. And I honestly agree. It's not that big of a deal, guys. Just claw that bad boy and call it a day. Moving on to the Lance. These are the changes that occurred for the Lance. I'll be honest with you, I'm not a Lance main. I've never even touched a Lance. It's just never been a playstyle that entices me. But I'm not going to pretend like I know what I'm talking about. But these are the changes. And based off of what I saw from the footage, which I believe is right here, it just looks like it became more effective at countering monsters while playing the defensive end, which honestly is kind of the,
run that, then you can see what I'm talking about.
Let's take a look at it. So see, he blocked, jab, and charged up his blade for the counterattack right there. What I noticed is this part right here. While he was defending, his shield was still charging. And that's pretty much what they said in the notes. You can now charge while guarding, which again, that's gonna make it easier for you to counter while defending simultaneously. Oh, so let's watch that one more time. So he's guarding, charging the shield up while guarding, and then he lets go for the counter. honestly, this is as fun as the lance has ever looked for me personally. Next up on the list is going to be Switch Axe. Switch Axe was something that felt honestly pretty clunky to me during the closed beta. One of the problems and gripes that I had is that it took too damn long to charge up the axe mode to go into the sword mode. And that's exactly what they adjusted and addressed in this discussion. Various adjustments made so that switching to sword mode after building the axe mode gauge feels more satisfying. They literally said verbatim too, they're going to make it easier for you to fill up your axe mode so that you can go into the sword mode more conveniently. And they even like said that the sword mode is going to feel a bit more potent, if you will, to match the axe mode gauge being filled up. The next thing is parameter improvements made to various moves, including full release slash. I always take parameter improvements as like a hitbox improvement. That was also another thing I felt during the beta where the moves just kind of felt a bit shy of their target, and you're kind of moving slow at the same time too. So I'm like, damn, not only am I moving slow, but the hitbox isn't that good as well. That's what that second one's going to kind of narrow down on. And then finally, knockback is now negated when using full release slash. This is actually very, very important because your full release slash is one of those moves you want to pull off. And sometimes you're willing to take a hit to pull off that strong and powerful ability. But if you get knocked back, well, you can't even take, not only are you taking a hit, you get knocked on your ass. Now that the knockback is negating that, you can pull off the full release slash and take the hit. That's huge. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. Okay. So what I liked right here is the counter. That's a counter. You take a little bit of damage, but in return, you're able to continue dealing damage there. And when I say a little bit of damage, you barely take any damage. Watch this health bar at the top left. Counter. Barely moved, right? Let's replay that back one more time. Watch the health bar at the top. Barely moves. Meanwhile, you're constantly building up that mode. Here's the full release. Oh my God, that sounds incredible. Pay attention. He took the hit in order to pull off the strong move. Good timing too. So those are significant changes to the Switch Axe. Next up, we got the sword and the shield. First on the menu is Rising Slash can now be used while guarding. That's incredible, right? If you're able to do Rising Slash while guarding, it essentially means you can still pull off some damage while reading the monster, you know, making sure you're aware of when that big attack's coming that you have to guard. So it's like slash, slash, oh, the move's coming, guard. That's huge. And it's going to add to the comfortability of playing sword and shield. The next up is parameter improvements to various attacks. This is essentially, again, improving on the hitboxes of these particular attacks, normal attacks and perfect rush. Perfect rush is the only way I will play the sword and shield. It just feels so incredible, so gratifying to pull off. We'll go over that because they show off a demonstration here in the video. Improve the responsiveness of the mobile chop and side slash combo, as well as guard slash and perfect rush. Again, it seems like they're just kind of polishing out the sword and shield. Improved evasion effectiveness of backstep and sliding swipe. So let's go ahead and take a look at all these.
Guarding again.
Okay, here we go. So you see how he's guarded? Look at that strafing to the left and right too. Left, right. See that shield's in front too. Good dodge to the side. Mobility looks excellent. Nice and swift attacks. Straight into the... Okay, I'll be honest with you. I'd never seen that move. But here's the perfect rush. That's the perfect rush when he jumps back. Here's the full perfect rush combo. And then into the Shoryuken. I love that. I love that so much. I love that freaking move, man. And then you can loop that too for people who don't know about sword and shield. Next up on the menu is going to be the bow. They did a bit of a rebalancing. Some people are going to take it as an immediate nerf, which it was, but it was a necessary nerf. Rebalancing the bow with increased attack power and responsiveness of moves such as normal attack and arc shots, while toning down the power of Tracer's shots. Essentially, they were trying to do a balancing aspect because the bow has a number of tools in its arsenal, but what are tools to be utilized if they're just 30 times weaker than that one tool that just does a ridiculous amount of damage, right? That's just... It's an imbalance aspect, and what's going to happen is you're going to throw away all the other tools in the trash can, and you're only ever going to do that one tool. So the thought process here was, let's balance out the playstyle so that all these tools are going to be beneficial depending on the scenarios being offered to you during the combat experience. We'll go over what I'm talking about here in a bit. When targeting a monster with focused strike, multiple wounds are now locked onto one by one with a brief delay in between rather than all at once. In other words, this was explained to me by a person who played Bo during the beta. This is a nerf. Straight up, because before you were able to lock onto all targets at once and essentially just continue like to do ridiculous amounts of damage with this move. Let's see what we're talking about here. Okay. Right here, this is the lock on one at a time versus all at once. Look at how much slower that is. And then you go into this right now. Is that a much longer period of time to pull off that move? Yes. Is that a nerf? Yes. However, it is a necessary nerf, because if they just enabled you to instantly charge all three of these lock-on mechanisms here, right before it was all at once and then you let it go, that was so broken that that would pretty much be the only means of you doing your DPS, because it's just so much more efficient. So they toned it down, and now you're doing one at a time to make it a more meaningful pull off during points of the fight, probably when they're toppled over or doing, you know, something that doesn't involve going to run you over. But basically, you're going to have a window to use that move versus spamming that move, and that's what we call balance. Okay, and the final touch-ups are going to be general wide-ranging adjustments to skills and elemental values to balance for full game content, including in-game, and then overall adjustments to hit detection and low damage output compared to past Monster Hunter titles. All this pretty much just sounds like making sure everything has been balanced, polished, and refined prior to the release. The other thing that they mentioned that's not up on the screen is Hunting Horn got a necessary nerf, much similar to what I just showed you with the bow. They pretty much discovered that enabling us to use two weapons on a hunt just means that we're still going to use one weapon. We're just going to take the Hunting Horn to buff up that one weapon. So essentially they said, yeah, guys, sorry, but the Hunting Horn is way too broken as a supportive weapon. You could just attack up large, not only yourself, but your whole party, and then just continue using one weapon. What they essentially did is they shortened the duration of the attack buff, as well as lowered the potency of the attack buff when applied to the party. However, this only occurs when you switch from the Hunting Horn over to your next weapon. If you are a Hunting Horn user and you're planning to use that weapon in and of itself, you got a buff. What they did is they actually increased the efficacy of the Hunting Horn buffs when you use the Hunting Horn. But it's when as soon as you push it over, that's when it's going to shorten the duration as well as shorten the efficacy of the buff given to the party. Again, this was strategically put into the game as a tone down because people were just going to abuse the Hunting Horn, if that makes sense. Stack up large, boom, buff the party. All right, now let me switch over to my actual weapon. Does that make sense? And that was the final significant change to all of the weapons, so to speak. The final thing I want to add in here, guys, is they did show off some of the specs for what you can do on consoles as well as PC. What you're looking at right here is what you're going to be able to do on the PS5. It's a upscaling of 4K from the 1080p, which means it's a budget 4K option. It's not real true 4K experience, but they have 30 FPS if you're going to prioritize graphics, and then they have 60 FPS if you're going to prioritize frame rates. I'll be honest, if you're trying to play, you know, a game as technical as Monster Hunter at 4K with uncapped FPS, it's just in my personal opinion, it's a bit unrealistic. But they did say for Steam, which is going to be the PC, obviously, it's going to vary depending on the hardware and settings. Some people took that as, oh, uncapped. I wouldn't. I would take that with a grain of salt. I would say that this, to me, this means we're still figuring out what that's going to look like. Which means give it a bit more time. Now, they did mention that they're going to do a PC benchmark tool that, you know, PC players can utilize to see what they're going to be able to pull off with their PC specs. But they said that they didn't finish that out yet and to wait for them to iron that out prior to their release of Monster Hunter Wilds. And that is pretty much everything that you can expect to see in the latest pre-launch community update from the developer and the legendary Tokuda himself. As always, I hope I brought you guys some value. Thanks for watching. Peace, love, and happiness, and I'll catch you on the flip side.